So there we go. Hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast. My name is Michael, and we are here tonight with Chris and Mark, and we are going to be doing Detention live, our bi-weekly, every other weekly, fortnightly, however you say that, loose format TTRPG talk show. Welcome to everyone watching now or in the future. So, Mark, you are our special guest tonight. For those who may not, of course, happy to have you. But for those who may not know you, give us a little introduction. Who is Mark in the role-playing game world?
All right. So I'm Mark Craddock. I run the Cross-Planes blog. I've run it since 2012. It's dedicated to a lot of making monsters, a lot of the OSR, some 5th edition, and Savage Worlds. I like a lot of systems, so I kind of go through cycles where I'll create stuff for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be 50 soon. I've been role-played. I was kind of a late bloomer in that I didn't actually start playing until I was a sophomore in college.
Okay.
But I've been a DM for most of that. Right now I play in a regular 5th edition game that's a lot of fun. I wouldn't mind playing some more OSR stuff, but right now we're pretty invested in 5e, so I don't rock the boat.
Right.
I run a store, Comic Book World. My family owns it. We have 2 stores in Kentucky. My oldest daughter runs one, and then I run the other.
Nice.
I kind of have I'm really lucky. I mean, I get to do, something super fun in my day job. And then on the blog, which I also do publishing on Drive to RPG, Cross-Planes Game Studio,
Mm-hmm.
I get to make blog posts and have made right around 15 to 20 different PDF products. So, I count my blessings every day.
Well, I'm very happy to finally get to meet you face to face. We were chatting just before we went live. I actually have been to your store. I have been a customer. I've purchased things at your store. I had no idea you were the one that ran it. I don't know if you were there that day that I bought stuff or not, but I do remember the store.
That's awesome.
And
the Comic Book World.
Yep, Comic Book World in Florence, Kentucky is the one that I went to, and I bought the Forbidden Lands box set from you, which is the game I very much enjoy. Joining us tonight, as always, is Chris. Chris, the regular co-host. Chris, go ahead and say hello to everyone. Introduce yourself as well.
Hello, everyone. Besides being the normal co-host here, I get to be the GM on the Redemption podcast, the Star Wars AP.
Oh, cool.
Still waiting for somebody to prove me wrong that I'm not the longest running AP. Well, not me, but our show. Somebody can prove me wrong. I don't know. I'll buy you a blue milk someday.
And of course, I am Michael. I am the host of the RPG Academy and kind of the ringleader of all the various things that we do. I just want to take a quick moment, since I have everyone here, to remind everyone that we are doing a giveaway of the alt cover copy of the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Once we hit 600 followers of the channel, we are currently at 539, so we're 61 away. We're going to give a copy this way to one of the people who follows. If you are a subscriber, you get double entries. Currently, we don't have that many subscribers, so the odds are still in pretty much everyone's favor, I guess. But yeah, so all you got to do is follow the channel to be entered. Once again, once we get 600, and then once we do that, we'll probably schedule another giveaway with whatever the next book WotC puts out or something like that. But welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to jump into things as we always do. We start with what we call extracurricular. And this is just talking briefly about what we're up to recently, things we're enjoying. It could be long walks in the park. It could be the new Loki TV show. It could be a CD, or are CDs a thing anymore? I'm old. Is it Spotify now? I don't know. But music you're listening to, books, TV, whatever the case may be. Chris, I'll actually start with you tonight. What have you been up to, buddy?
Oh, it's been a crazy last couple of weeks since we last talked. Finally getting back to working out a little bit. Did that before the show. I can barely lift my arms, so where my fingers been could be real interesting. Yeah. Still doing some tabletop simulator with you and a few other people, which has been fun. On a different note, boy, these are all the tough things for me to talk about, so give me a second. On Father's Day, the positive part is on Father's Day, I got the privilege of hosting an Eagle Scout Court of Honor for one of my boys.
Nice.
It was awesome. It went really well. Hour later, I get the negative news. One of the assistant scoutmasters went to go drop some stuff off at our trailers, and both our trailers are gone.
Dude.
I'm
Somebody
sorry.
came in, cut 2 padlocks off of them, and stole them right from the American Legion in broad daylight.
Oh, man.
Oh,
I was pretty. It was rough on me because we have a camp out in 2 weeks, and it's our big camp out of the year, and we didn't get to do it last year. And my first thought was, what are we going to do? There's all our camping gear. We did some, talking online. I forgot that on one of our pages, a friend of mine who's a scoutmaster in another troop was on there. He called me up and said, hey, use our troop's gear. We're not going that week. We're going a couple weeks later. So we're covered for the short term. We've done the police report. We're working on insurance. On a positive, though, I sat down with the boys last night and we talked. They're actually, I guess kind of in a unique way, excited to learn from it. And they're excited to try to get all new gear. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
We value this stuff at roughly between 10 and 15 grand that we lost.
Wow.
Between 2 trailers, all the tents, the camping gear. To help with that, and this is the part that I have a hard time with, so give me a second. I already talked to you about it, Michael. We've actually set up a GoFundMe account. So I'm throwing it out there to, everybody's listening. Any donation is appreciated. Throw us $1, $2, whatever. We don't care. We just have a goal. If we can hit the 15 grand, that should replace all the gear. If we can get more, then our plan is to take the extra and actually build a fence and hope that deters them, putting in some new lighting, maybe a security camera, depending upon how much we can raise.
Right.
right.
So check my Twitter, Burlew_Chris. I posted it before the show. I worded it like 20 times because I'm not good at these kinds of things. So
Right.
Not the most positive, but yeah, it's what I've been dealing with. I kind of a side note with that. I've gotten to go on TV twice with 2 different news stations. Interesting to be interviewed, and afterwards they're like, wow, you talk really well when you're in front of a camera and with the microphone in front of you, and it seemed to flow pretty well. I'm like, I kind of do this podcasting thing,
Yeah.
and I kind of.
Were you repping a Redemption shirt on TV?
No, I went with the Boy Scout uniform.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess that makes more sense, brand loyal, but it would have been nice to, maybe like underneath the brown shirt to see a Redemption top.
I didn't think about it. We are trying to spin it into a real positive. Like I've had a couple different boys get up and also do the news reports and talk to the reporters and talk to them. Okay, before you go up there, just realize you're just talking to the person. Don't look at the camera. Don't get freaked out. If you mess up your sentence, who cares? It's not live.
Yeah.
Just start over. They're going to edit it. Just kind of walking through them. It's been a unique process. At the end of the day, it's going to be a positive experience. There's just hurdles we have to overcome right now.
Yeah. I had a chance to be on a local TV station for AcadeCon a few years back. They had me on their morning show like 7 a.m. or something to talk about it, and I was terrified. It went okay, but yeah, I was terrified. All right, so Mark, we'll go to you next. What are some things you've been up to recently you'd like to talk about?
So I had a big day today. I don't know how many people, how into comics you are, but I was able to buy the first appearance of Wolverine, both Hulk 180 and 181, and the first appearance of the Punisher today. That was pretty cool. So
nice.
Wow.
Yeah, I get to, like I said, I really enjoy what I do, both for a living and as an amateur, and that was pretty cool. We the founder and owner of our company, Paul, who's my father-in-law, he retired in November. So while I worked with him for 20 years, now I'm getting to do this stuff by myself, and it's pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. I actually owned the first appearance of Wolverine at one time, and I also owned the first appearance of Morbius at one time. And then I lost my entire comic collection from a flood.
I'm so sorry.
Oh my God. Every now and then I'll go into a comic shop and I'll see a wall, like the premium comics on the wall. Like, you used to have that one, you used to have that one, you used to have that one. They're all worth hundreds, if not thousands of dollars at this point. Yeah. And I have a collection. I started recollecting again later, but I missed out on some of those
Right.
premiums. I actually went through my comics maybe about 6-7 months ago. It's on the YouTube channel. I just pulled out my boxes, was just going through them on
Yeah.
camera, and I do have the first appearance of Gambit.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and a buddy of mine, he has the
Couple
first appearance of
$100.
Deadpool.
Yeah, that's probably closer to 1,000 at this point.
Yeah, he looked it up. I mean, I'm sure it's not great. Like I was in a box in my basement. I'm sure it's like a 5.
Right.
But it's still kind of cool. I mean, I have a bunch of things that I love, but out of everything I have that
Right.
could be worth something, that's probably my highest value comic at this point. But
That's
I'm sorry,
awesome.
I
Yeah,
kind of
I would-
hijacked your section.
Oh
here.
no, that's all right. These were graded. There's 3 companies that grade comics. It's CGC, CGCS, and PGX, and so these were graded, which makes the whole process easier because it's a very, I mean, in terms of what they're selling for, where when you're buying ungraded books, it's kind of based on my eye as a collector and your eye as a seller. So
Right.
not a collector, a seller.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's pretty good day. I'm
Nice.
pretty happy.
All right. Well, very cool. Anything else you want to share?
Yeah. I'm probably late to the party for a lot of people, but I've really gotten into Sign Nominate publishing with Godbound and Worlds Without Number and Stars Without Number.
Okay.
And I actually ran a one-shot of Godbound about a week or so ago and was really, really impressed. I'm impressed with everything they've done, but I really, that's a variation on the OSR rule set that I've come to really enjoy a lot in a very short time. And right now, if you go to crossplanes.com, which is my blog, you'll see that I'm doing a lot of stuff for it right now.
Right.
I smell a trial. I'm just saying.
A what?
A trial. Michael could host a trial of it and showcase it to the world.
Yeah. So a trial
okay.
is when we do an actual play of a game we've never played before.
Oh. Gotcha.
So yeah,
All right.
we can talk about that offline. We are always looking for more things to do.
That sounds great.
Excellent. So I have a few things to cover. Some good, some in the middle. It's kind of weird. There's a lot of anxiety, but I'll start with Action 12 Cinema, of course, which is a role-playing game that I'm currently designing. I did a complete second draft over vacation. It went so much easier than the first draft. I think it's such a better game at this point. It's written a lot better. I turned it over to my editor, and now, again, I kind of, it's like pushing my baby out of the nest type of a thing and hoping it'll fly. But my editor had a baby like 7 hours ago, roughly. So they've told me it may be a while before they actually get around to looking at it, which I completely understand. But then that just sort of maintains this level of anxiety that I want someone who's actually a professional to look at it and go, this is good or this is bad, and give me feedback, and not just people I know that, I'm sure they're being honest, but there's still that we're friends,
Right.
Kind of rose-colored glasses kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
so I have to wait a little bit longer.
Right.
The big news is AcadeCon. So we have been talking about this literally for months and 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 months. So I'm almost ready. I'm trying to draw this out. So here's the plan, but the plan has already gotten derailed. The plan is we are going to have AcadeCon this year if enough people will show up to justify it. So the way we're going to determine that is the way we've always determined it. We're going to have a Kickstarter. So the goal right now is on July 1st to launch a Kickstarter for AcadeCon 2021. It has a goal of $7,000, which is roughly half of what we got back in 2019. But it's enough to do everything we normally do at the base level. So it might not have all the bells and whistles that we usually do, but it will have the rooms, we'll have all the stuff we need to do. So as long as $7,000 worth of people are willing to actually show up and play games with us in November, we should be good. Here's the hiccup. The Kickstarter campaign was not approved by Kickstarter. I got the email back today that said, sorry, your campaign is not approved. And I don't understand why, because it's the exact, I basically copied and pasted the text from the last one we did. And this would literally be the 7th one of these we've done. We've done 6 previous Kickstarters, all for a convention. So when they sent me the message, and it was a form letter, but it had like, we don't allow this, or this, or this. We're none of those things. So I sent them back a message. I'm like, there's clearly a misunderstanding. Maybe something I have in there isn't written correctly, or something. Can you please tell me specifically what the problem is so that I can either change it or explain why it's not a conflict? And now I'm back in the waiting game of when will they get back to me? So the July 1st date may not work because I may not have gotten it approved by then. So stand by, I guess, for further notice. But right now, the plan is to have the event if enough people will show up so that we can afford to have it. So, and that's really the way it's always been. But just with the COVID thing, it's a little bit more of a concern. Roughly about 60% of the people that I've talked to said they would still come anyways. So we're kind of planning on a smaller attendance this year than in years past, but we should still be viable at that number. So the Kickstarter just, as always, gives us a chance to make sure we have enough money to pay for things before we actually have to pay that money to someone. Because once I sign the contract, I'm in for all that money, even if we end up canceling later. So it's just nice to know that enough people are showing up. And then very quickly, I am going to GenCon. I did end up getting an Airbnb, which was reasonably priced. I have my badge, so I'm going to be there, but I'm the only person from the Academy going. So it's going to be a very interesting year this year. I won't have our hotel night hangouts, and I won't have any of the events that I'm running, which are usually some of my favorite things, because this year with GenCon, you have to be part of a group before you can run events. I might try to run some pickup stuff of Action 12 Cinema, but I may also just play a bunch of stuff. So anyway, all that out of the way, I guess it's time for us to jump into our first improv game. And this is 10 Things. And this is an improv game where we will prompt one another in turn to try to come up with a list of 10 things that fit the prompt. Immediacy is more important than accuracy, so a bad list done quickly is better than a good list that takes a while. Now, Mark, you are the guest, so you can go first, second, or third in terms of giving the items based off the prompt. So do you want to prompt someone first, or do you want to be prompted first?
I would rather be prompted first.
All right, so I will prompt you, then you will prompt Chris, and then Chris will close the circle and prompt me. I'm a big fan of names. So the name of your comic book store is Comic Book World, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
All right. So give me 10 different names that you could have named your store or might have named your store in a different world. So alternate realities, what are 10 different names for your comic book store?
Things from a different world.
1.
My mom threw my comics away.
2.
Black Star Books.
3.
Central City Comics.
4.
Professor X Comics Continuum.
5.
Empire State University Bookstore.
Nice. 6.
Latveria Forever.
7.
7.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm blanking. I'm sorry.
No.
Shadowcats Comics
8.
and Book World.
8.
I think.
And the Dragon's Horde.
9.
And The Witch's Regret.
10.
10.
Woo! That, in fact, was 10 things. Great. You did fantastic. You did great.
Thank you.
So now you will prompt Chris to come up with a list of 10 things. And they can be whatever you want them to be.
All right. The name of 10 magic swords.
Oh.
Ooh, that's a good one. Excalibur.
1.
Mm-hmm. Let's go with Holy Avenger.
2.
I got the Sun Sword.
3.
Michael's Quick Wit.
4.
Let's see. We'll go with Lucky Strike.
5.
Death Strike.
6.
Short Stabby Thing.
7.
Let's see. Throw Me, I'll Come Back.
8.
And This End That Way.
9.
And Maybe I Like You, Maybe I Don't.
10. Woo! That was, in fact, a
Good
list
job.
of 10 things.
Whew.
All right, Chris, lay it on me, brother.
All right. I'm going to stay with the comic book theme. Let's go with Michael. Give me a list of 10 beauty products used by superheroes.
Okay. Wow. God, I'm trying to think of adamantium stilettos. Does that count?
One.
Shadowcat blush.
Two.
Or a concealer. They'd be, yeah, Shadowcat concealer. Rogue's Rouge.
Three.
Wolverine's hair gel.
Four.
That's a brand name, not ownership. Hulk Ball Busters. It's like a cup sort of thing. Stormbreaker body spray, like Axe body spray, but yeah.
Six.
Colossus has got to have like a sunglass brand of some sort. Ruby quartz sunglasses, of course. Blue, like red blockers, not blue blockers. Yeah.
Okay.
How many is that? I don't even know.
Seven.
Okay. I'm just going through comic book characters. Professor Xavier's hair shine.
Eight.
Quicksilver foot, fungal foot powder.
Nine.
And Scarlet Witch's rosary bead necklaces. Chokers, definitely chokers. Yes. Yay!
10.
Hey, that was in fact a list of 10 things. All right.
Good job.
So now we're going to move into used books. In this part of the show here, we're going to let Mark take over. Mark's going to talk a little bit about a campaign that he has either played or ran in previously. And the idea is we're going to try to mine something out of this story, either things that went really well that we could take to our own tables, or maybe something you tried that didn't work well. And we try to figure out maybe what we could do differently, or maybe avoid those at our own table. So Mark, take it away. Tell us a little bit about this campaign you wanted to share.
So I ran Out of the Abyss, which I think was maybe WotC's third campaign for 5th edition.
Okay.
It starts out in the Underdark. You actually start out as slaves of Drow, and you quickly kind of it was what was interesting is there's also these other slaves, and each of them were really well fleshed out. One of them believed he was the Avatar of Baal, for instance.
Okay.
Which what was cool there is I was able to kind of turn him into a long-term nemesis who they were really unsure about. Was he really the Avatar of Baal? Was he not? I did find, though, that after, I think by about 4th level, started at level 1. The only campaign I've ever run from level 1 to level 20. It was pretty sweet. But about level 4, we were all a little bit tired of the Underdark. It was hard to keep explaining interesting grottos or caverns or pools. So we went up, and at the time, I was reading, I think I had read The Sundering, which was Wizards of the Coast, kind of fixing the Forgotten Realms after they combined it with Abir. And so I'd read some of the more recent Drift novels. So I kind of took some of that material. They ended up becoming fairly embroiled to a community of a fort town. And then, weirdly enough, I guess I'm allowed to say this, I also playtest for Wizards. And so I was playtesting at the time the Storm King's Thunder.
Okay.
So I took a little bit of stuff from it because I liked the Drow, but I didn't want just one enemy throughout. So we kind of eventually had the giants kind of entered this battle for this this town, which was kind of the only trade center within a fair amount, because it's on the Sword Coast, close to Icewind Dale, that kind of stuff. Not the 10 towns, but close. And we did a lot where there was a lot of paranoia because we had Drow infiltrating the city. We also had the threat of giants approaching. So it was kind of nice. We turned it into an urban game for maybe about 10th or 12th level, which was kind of neat to go from Underdark to Wilderness to urban. What I was finding out, I made a few bad assumptions. I kind of thought challenge rating worked the same way in 5th edition that it worked in 3.5 or 3.x, whatever, and it doesn't. And I started learning that I think our group was 4 players, but all 4 of them were they were not min-maxers, but they learned to play their characters really well.
Okay.
And when you've got that combined with my misunderstanding of challenge rating, most fights were pretty easy, and they didn't mind it, because they're having fun. But I kind of was, getting to that point of, why am I even wasting the resources if it's not even really wasting the resources?
Right.
One of the things I did is I started tinkering with monster design, which I've been doing quite a bit on the blog. And so I started working out mechanics where, even though bloodied wasn't a condition in 5th edition, I took it from 4th, and hey, when this happens, this ability goes off. It gave me some chance to kind of flex my muscles. Eventually we have the drow and the giants, run, basically destroy the town, but they were able to get a lot of people out, and we kind of then took the survivors to a nearby location. I don't remember what, and I apologize.
No worries.
It's been about 7 or 8 years. And then we kind of transitioned the game over to Waterdeep, where, having felt like we'd exhausted everything with the drow and the giants, I always was very interested in running a Tarrasque. I always thought that would be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that we were 12th level and I had enough to get us to 20, I started basically, I discovered that Bahamut and Tiamat had a brother. And I can never remember his name. I believe
Charlie,
Tiamat,
I think.
Steve.
It might be, yeah.
Chad. Sounds like a Chad.
Something like that, yeah. So what I basically did is since they had played, a lot of them had played the Tyranny of Dragons campaign. I didn't run it for them, but a lot of them had played it. And since they had prevented Tiamat from coming back, I kind of created a group of chromatic dragons that were very upset with her. And so they came up with a plan where they assassinated her. And in the ritual, when it destroys her in the let's see, she's on Avernus, I believe. They kill her in Avernus, and that allows them to bring their brother back. And I just basically had his name means Tarrasque. So, that's glossing over a lot of stuff because they were real involved. I've always been really interested in Dragonlance. I've never really played in Kryn, but I've read a lot of the novels. So for a period of time before this, Raistlin was actually one of their enemies. He had the ability to get away from Tacitus, who is, a form of Tiamat for me. And so he was in the process of finding the various items, and actually is who assassinated Tiamat. They eventually had to, once he assassinated her, they were able to track him down, but at that point they bring Tarrasque back. And so they're having, unfortunately, the flaw in the thing is the Tarrasque was not a very good enemy. And that's somewhat my problem, as not understanding the action economy and not being fully aware of what some of my PCs could do, especially at 20th level.
Right.
Because, as a player, I don't know that I've ever played past 11 or 12. So
I played 12 one time. Yeah.
Okay. So I actually played through Curse of Strahd where we ended at 11 or 12. But yeah, so, I really liked a lot of my ideas as I was approaching different levels of the D&D multiverse. But, I look back now and go, man, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. But we all had a good time. But I really enjoyed, for me, building some myths to my multiverse. And so what has been cool is, since I play with some of the same people, whenever I'm running a Forgotten Realms game, what I've done in the game is the history for that. I don't overwhelm people with it. I don't, but eventually they kill the Tarrasque, and a Charlatan in my multiverse becomes the new god of chromatic dragons.
Right.
And so, different things like that. But, like I said, I really regret that I didn't understand the math better. And I guess looking back, I wish I would have written a little bit more down so I could be more specific instead of just, I used to do a lot more world building than I do at the moment. And that was kind of in the middle of that phase, so it worked really well. It was just a good game. And we just, making it the 20th level. I don't know if either of you are familiar with Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Yeah.
I think in the lead up to the fall of the town, they stopped 3 or 4 Demon Lords from appearing. And what we decided is we were going to play it next. Basically, one of the Demon Lords, they shoved through a portal and then dropped a nuke on him, a gnome nuke, essentially. And what happened was the game, essentially, their souls, the souls of their 20th level characters, are going to that world to deal with the effects that they created, essentially, by shunting, I think it was gravity, to this world. And so they start out as, they go from 20th level guys to these Shadow of the Demon Lord guys. And, it was fun. Obviously, I think sometimes it doesn't come, maybe my explanation is not the best, and I apologize.
No. I think you're doing fine. I do want to step in because I'm watching our stream.
Yeah.
And my internet's terrible. I mention all the time, but we're getting some fluctuation on the quality. So I don't know right now if anyone is even watching, but if you are, it's probably looking a little stilted. But we're going to carry on because I still will put this on YouTube and it'll still go out on the audio only, but I'm not sure the stream is actually doing very well right now. So there were several things that you talked about that I would like to pull out and maybe talk a little bit about, but I want to give Chris a chance. Was there anything that you wanted to comment on or maybe ask about in the campaign Mark was talking about?
First, I'm a big fan of Shadow of the Demon Lord.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. It's a very good system. I really like it.
Have you had a chance to take a look at Shadow of the Weird Wizard?
Not yet.
So he's playtesting that right now. It's pretty sweet.
Yep. I understand that's the family-friendly version.
It is, yes. It was going to be Shadow of the Mad Wizard, but there was some concern about insulting people with mental illness, so he went a different route.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know Rob well. I won't claim that we're friendly, but he's been on the podcast. He usually comes to AcadeCon. So we've played some Shadow of the Demon Lord. And that's just awesome. The idea of him trying to come up with a family-friendly version of this game is hilarious to me.
It is. I agree.
He's actually supposed to be on the show July 21st. He's the scheduled guest. So I'm hoping that by then we might be able to do some announcements about it. But that'll be up to him, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
The other thing, I like mixing IPs. So you talked about Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance. I do that a lot.
Yeah.
It's just fun for me.
I agree.
I might change the name just so the players don't catch it right away, or if they even catch it at all. But to me, it's fun to mix that stuff in.
That was about the only downfall is that. So I'll be 49 this year, but most of my players were in their mid-20s, so they might have a cursory understanding of Dragonlance, but not much.
What a shame. They should all read it.
I agree.
But maybe that's just because I grew up reading them. But the other thing, I like the idea of setting a goal of, hey, at the end of this campaign, let's kill the Tarrasque or attempt to kill the Tarrasque. I mean, that's a neat concept to do. I've never played a game, I don't think, past 10th or 11th level either, except for the time we started with 20th level characters because we wanted to actually play that epic level game.
Right.
And we learned very quickly that once you start fighting some of those epic level creatures, things go bad quickly.
They do.
Or they go really well quickly. It's
right.
There's not a lot in between.
No, there isn't. And I'm really glad that Wizards is making so many beginner products because we have so many new players and we want to attract new players. I really feel like they should give level 15 to level 20 a little love and give us, if nothing else, just an adventure pack.
Yeah, I don't know how many people really have the attention span for that.
That's fair. And I will say that was kind of in the background. Once we hit 12th level, I just basically started running monsters I always wanted to try. So So I got to deal with illicit, I got to deal with beholders, liches. It was really nice.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, you could take D&D, throw out the experience concept, and just do what Shadow the Demon Lord does. And every time we play, you're going to level up at the next game just so you could get that experience. But
Right.
you might put a lot on the GM.
I agree, because I've actually contemplated doing that, but I still struggle with the math a little bit. So I still haven't taken that plunge.
Not even the math. You have to think about, okay, this character is going in this direction, so I need to put this type of magic item in there to help them.
Right. That's another good point.
There'd be a lot of planning, unless you play like a marathon 8-hour session once a month.
Right.
Then it would be feasible, but otherwise that could be a little rough.
So I'll jump in here just because I have a particular take on this. I'm the person who likes to run really slow games where you don't level hardly it ever. And I do like the idea of leveling every session. Like there's a part of me that thinks that would be fun, but here's my reason why I don't. And feel free to disagree. This is more for the audience. But especially in D&D, not every level, but some levels, and I like to play wizards, so I'm going to beat a bunch of spells, is I want to play with my new toys. Like, I don't want to get to the third level and get my new second level spells and don't even get to use one because of the way the campaign works out. And the next level, or next game, I'm fourth, and before you know it, now I have my third level spells. I never even got to use my second level spells. And, same thing like abilities and powers. I want to have time to play with all my toys before I get new toys. And that's my biggest issue with leveling up so fast, is that you're constantly getting new toys and you don't get to play with your old ones. And I'm probably in the minority, especially how slow I like my games to progress. But that would be at least my pushback on the idea of leveling too fast, is let me play with these new abilities before you give me another one on top of it. But again, I apologize, I digress. Chris, continue.
No. In our case, we only play about a max of 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. And so that is something that kind of informed my decision not to bring it to D&D, because there is more system mastery than there is in Shadow.
Yeah.
And, while most of our players are pretty involved, we have a few casual players and they already kind of feel a little detached because, somebody's telling them not to use this spell or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky our group's really good. There's a lot of respect, but, and while I did use Milestone in D&D, I agree there would be a disconnect. And I ran Dungeon Crawl Classics a few years ago, and when we got done with the funnel, I was like, I would love to just play these little guys. I don't mean little, but they aren't heroes. I've created a setting that's very much inspired by Lockmar, which I've only read a bit of Libra's stuff, but I always think it's kind of neat to be the underdog or the city rat who's just trying to make it through, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Fair.
Also a big fan of Warhammer's Old World, so.
Yeah. I commend you for mixing all the different stories in and
Thank you.
going from the underworld up. I'm the guy who's not the biggest fan of the Drow, but to me it's just because I don't like how kind of one-dimensional they're written.
Sure, and I respect that immensely. I think in my case, so I didn't start playing until I was in college, and I think the very first AD&D product I got was Menzo Barenzen, but we didn't play a lot of D&D. I started playing with Champions 4th edition, and we went from a system that I learned that I could do anything to a DM of AD&D 2nd edition who wouldn't say yes. So until I discovered the OSR, I really didn't get the appeal of D&D because we didn't get to enjoy rulings, not rules, and we didn't get magic items and stuff like that. We just kind of got, he just was a very tough DM, and I'm sure in his mind he felt like he was making us earn stuff, but in reality, we just didn't enjoy the game.
Yeah.
But now that I'm older and wiser, I can go, hey, I should have just said, hey man, what are you doing?
Right. There's a lot of dials,
Okay.
and this could be, for any role playing game, but I think D&D is,
Hmm.
particular that, one click over might be perfect for this group, but a different group might be three
Right.
clicks this way. And, maybe that's
Yeah.
what that DM was used to. Or I mean,
Hmm.
I said that I was a terrible DM for many years. Like I just awful. But I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. This very well could be what this person
Sure.
thought they were doing as well.
I,
But
I
what
think so. Yeah.
but one thing I wanted to comment on, and I can tie this back to comic books, is about the drow. I'm also not particularly a fan of them, but I think that there's an opportunity there, much like a comic book character. Sometimes a comic book character will be introduced, and they're a little one note, they're a little hacky, but then the right creative team takes that character and they pop. So the drow being kind of
Right.
one dimensional is an opportunity for someone to make them their own and not worry so much about how they're written by the book and say, these are going to be my version and give them depth and make them
Right.
interesting. But you have to enjoy one, wanting to do that, and two, being good at doing it. But there's certainly an opportunity to take something that is lesser, my opinion, and making it
Sure.
great through what you bring to the story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, it's weird. And maybe through the history of AD&D, I think Drow has probably been overutilized, especially once Salvatore started getting published in his novels and Driss became a breakout character. So I definitely agree with those observations.
So, Chris, again, anything else you wanted to touch on? I feel like I keep interrupting. I keep asking you, then I
No,
interrupt.
you're good.
So just ignore me.
No. Um, there's a lot to unpack and what you talked about, because I mean that was such a long campaign. I don't know too many people who've successfully done that. So I
I
mean,
think it was 14 months, which looking back on it, especially coming out of an epidemic, you're thinking, how did I even have the time to do that?
Mm.
And I've tried to recreate it, and thus far it hasn't happened. So, we'll see. I hope one day to say I've done it twice, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess.
And especially as I move, I've been playing 5th edition since next, and so that's like 2012. And as much as I like 5th edition, I'm a little tired of it. Not in a bad way, just I've always been more of the OSAR taught me to love D&D, and I think better understand it. But I've always had a passion for other systems. But we have, what's wonderful for the first time in my case, I have a group with 2 other great GMs. So I'm getting to play a lot more than I ever did.
Right.
And that's been really rewarding.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is nice.
I'll
get to the end of the week and I'm like, I don't have to do anything but sit down and roll some bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's most GMs, like little minor fantasy.
Right.
Finding a group of other GMs, then just rotating.
AJ and David are the 2 DMs in my group, and they're just spectacular. Right now we're playing through Avernus, about the Baldur's Gate one, where we're now in Avernus, and I think we just hit 10th level. So,
Nice.
And we started at level 1 because I died. My original PC was a cleric, and he died in the very first session.
What are your thoughts, Michael?
So there's a couple. One thing I wanted to ask, you already touched on it, was like how long did it take to go 1 to 20? But you already covered that. But I wanted to ask about the characters. How many character deaths did you have in that, where people had to bring in new characters, or did the same characters actually make it through the story?
So we lost. One of the players had a wizard that, and I believe it was first level. They found a book, and it was odd. If you turn to a certain page, there was a glyph, and he just happened to say, "Hey, I'm flipping through the whole book," and I'm like, "Okay," and I red misted him. I mean, he was so low level that I went negative to his hit points.
Right.
But otherwise, out of the 6 players, we only had 7 PCs, because he then made a bard who made it all the way. And so I think my philosophy has changed a little bit, and partly because of that. I didn't read a lot of fantasy growing up. I read comic books and enjoyed action movies. So I always was very much about, as a DM, and especially with the other DM I dealt with who was so hard on you,
Right.
I wanted to make the players feel spotlight. The spotlight is about them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I ran into is I really enjoyed making it about them, but because, again, I was having trouble with challenging fights, I tried to move us a little bit away from that because I just didn't understand why I'd waste an hour of game time if they're just going to, walk right through it.
Right.
I felt like I got better at it, but I still struggle with it when I'm running 5th edition. I mean, a lot of times, thankfully, our group can go, they'll enjoy combat or they'll enjoy role play. And I find that the older I get, the more I kind of just gear towards role play.
Yeah.
And that's cool too, but at the same time, maybe if I've had a bad week, I just want to sit down and kill some monsters and take their stuff.
Right.
I think it's not just your group, it's also what day of the week it is and how your week's been.
Right. Yeah, no, I completely understand that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't mean to keep harping on the CR thing. It's just, I guess I still struggle with that.
Well, I don't think it's you struggling as much. It's pretty much an open secret. The CR doesn't really work after 12th level in 5th edition. And so you're just guessing anyways. And
exactly.
I'm very much a pro fudgy DM. So I'll just throw a monster and I'll just keep adding hit points until I feel like it's been fun enough, and then I'll kill you, or you'll kill it.
The best fight we had, I called it a rage monster that literally at each tier a new power would kick in, and they love that fight. That was, they still talk about that fight, which is great. But I'm like, that's a weird, really odd way to build a monster. And I also, when I used to run 2nd edition, I never worried necessarily. I was more organic with things. They're like, well, if they go into an area with a level 14 creature,
right.
But on 5th edition, I've kind of bought into that whole, I don't know if being fair is the right, but they're very concerned about making the experience positive, which is great. I mean, I've been around enough negative gamers, I get it. But, I've kind of told my players that whatever I run next, we're just going to do a little bit of old school in terms of, hey, if you guys go somewhere and it's out of your league, you're going to run or you're going to die.
Right.
And again, I think that's just different philosophies as you're playing.
Yeah. And this isn't directly related to what you said, and I apologize, but it's something we haven't talked about yet. So can you touch on briefly what it's like to play test for WotC? Like, how do you do that?
Oh, sure.
And then what does that kind of look like? Because we've never had anybody talk about that before.
Sure. So back in 2012, I had I run a store, so I had a rep at Wizards of the Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird how it happened. I went to GenCon I guess in 2011, and I don't know if you guys went, but they had a whole elaborate Drow setup, and you could get these dice. And I was missing like 2 of them. So my rep and I had a pretty good relationship. So I was like, hey, not a big deal. Do you know if there's extras of these? But I figured if there were, they can just send me a couple dice, So it turns out those are hard to get. And we were talking and he felt bad. And he's like, I'm gonna put you in our friends and family program. I'm like, okay, that's fine, Well, what that did is so I think Next went live, if I'm not saying May of 2012, I got access to it in January. Mm-hmm. And it was weird because I had just started the blog. My best friend had moved to Florida maybe 3 or 4 years earlier. And our group, we've been playing together since we were in our teens, but a lot of it wasn't very positive anymore. For various reasons. I kind of have the philosophy of if there's a conflict, I'm at least 50% a part of it. And I reached a point where I was like, the amount of conflict we're having over something that's supposed to be our free time doesn't seem right to me.
Right. It's supposed to be
fun. Of course, my kids are right. And of course, my kids are getting older and I just had less time. So we had another instance and I just took a break. And for a long time, didn't think I was going to go back because we were running stuff in the store and I kind of lost my passion for it. But weirdly, when all of this happens, is I had been asked to join a Pathfinder group, and I thought, well, I'll try it. and then we got the next play test. So basically, they send me an email a couple times a year, give me a document, and then there's a survey you take. A lot of the mechanic stuff Unearthed Arcana takes care of.
Right.
It's just we get to see. So from what I have gathered, and I have seen this in action, even things we play test might not make it to publishing.
Yeah.
In fact, in that campaign that I went from 1 to 20, we were using a monk subclass that no one ever saw again, because it had this weird power where it could lay on. Basically, it could grapple you. You could spend chi, and no matter what it was you grappled, regardless of size, it couldn't get up. Which made the Tarrasque fight really terrible, by the way, because I didn't factor that. But
right.
you get 3 to 4, PDFs a year sometimes, and you're just given a window. I've done a lot of play testing, so it works pretty easily. They're real easy to deal with, in my opinion. We all have, I'm obviously not talking about anything recent because I don't want to break an NDA. I feel like since that was, something from that's already been published is not a big deal. But it is pretty cool. I won't lie. It's the only thing that I guess you could call a downside is by the time a product gets announced, I've already kind of been like, oh yeah, I forgot we did that.
Yeah.
Which isn't a terrible problem to have, but it is a little weird. And we've gotten to the point. So it used to be whenever we would get the survey, we would kind of share it and talk about it. But now most of us, like right now, David's running. When he's done, either me or AJ will take over. We don't know what. But a lot of times we're no longer all looking at adventures because there's multiple people who might run it. And so some of it is a little different than it used to be, but mostly what we get are adventures because the UA takes care of all the mechanics.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. I've never had a chance to do that, and the way I run games, I'm so loosey goosey on mechanics. I would be a terrible play tester anyways because I wouldn't give any valuable feedback.
Not necessarily, and play testing is a lot of times easier than people think, because I think a lot of people are just, they don't think about it, or they're a little nervous about it. But most, like Robert Schwab, I've play tested him a Shadow, and we're doing Shadow of the Weird Wizard, and there's a fair number of people testing that. So and it's also, though, the big requirement is just having the discipline to go through those steps.
Yeah.
Like sometimes not all of us can get together for a playtest session, so we're just kind of trying to use as many of us as possible and not derail it from our main game.
Right. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that and sharing your story. And again, congratulations on the 1 to 20. Hopefully it will happen again. But also, play other games, because other games are fun too.
Right. They are.
All right. But we need to move on. We're going to jump into Where Have My Fingers Been? This is our second improv game. And this game, we are going to prompt each other once again to instead of come up with a list, then we're going to prompt each other with a short scene that we will play out using our fingers as puppets. But it's very important that you sing the song first. But I will teach you the song before we go. But once again, Mark, you are the guest. So would you like to go first, second, or third in terms of performing the scene?
I think I'll go third.
Okay, so then you will prompt me, I will prompt Chris, and then Chris will prompt you to go last. So you're going to basically give me a prompt of where my fingers have been, and then I will act out that scene, but we have to start by singing the song. So, Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Where have my fingers been?
All right, so now you will prompt me, sir, to come up with a scene where my fingers have been.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
The New York sewers.
So, why did we come down here again? I tell you, man, I heard that there are like these giant alligators that get like flushed down the toilet. Like when kids get them for Christmas or whatever. Christmas, like who gets alligators for Christmas? Dude, shut up! You know what I'm talking about. They made a movie out of it. Yeah, it's a movie. It's not real. It's right over my shoulder, isn't it? Yes. And that's where my fingers have been.
There you go.
Yay!
That's excellent.
All right. So now I will prompt Chris for Chris to do a little scene, and then we'll finish it. He'll prompt you. So Chris, go ahead and sing the song, sir.
Okay.
Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Your fingers are in an autopsy where it appears someone was eaten by a giant alligator.
Well, what do you think, Doctor? I think he was eaten by something. Really? How can you tell? Well, all we have left is a foot and a finger. Brilliant deduction, Watson. Thank you, sir. By the way, I'm not a doctor. What? I just ate at a Holiday Inn Express last night. And that's where my fingers have been.
Oh, that's bringing it back. Wow, that's a callback there.
For the older folks in the crowd.
Yes, excellent. All right, so Chris will now prompt you, Mark. So now you get to sing the song.
Okay. Where have my fingers been? Where have my fingers been?
Perfect.
Awesome. Let's see. You are two high-level characters who happen to have walked in on two goblins arguing, and you've decided to commentate on it.
They think that turd is a gem. Yeah, what's up with that? I think they're stupid. Well, yeah, I mean they're goblins, but it's a turd. Is that one licking a turd? Don't. It's their culture. You can't be like that. We're supposed to be more enlightened. She's eating poop. I mean, poop? Hey, Black. Why are you eating poop? I thought it was a gem. He thought it was a gem. I mean, he's not ignorant, or he's ignorant. He's not stupid. Why are you guys standing there? Well, we don't want to kill you, because but yeah, we're observing. We're scouting the situation. We heard there's a don't tell them while we're here. Oh, yeah, we're leaving. Okay, we'll be back.
And that's where your fingers have been. Yay!
That's where my fingers have been. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So now we'll move into the last part of the show. This is called cryptozoology, and this is where we talk about a monster. Usually this is something from 5th edition, but it doesn't have to be. And we talk about ways that we may have used this monster in the past, what we think is interesting about the creature, and then we try to brainstorm some ways that we could use it in the future. Maybe some interesting twists. Mark, once again, you are the special guest, so please tell me, what monster would you like to talk about tonight?
So I chose the Wendigo. The Wendigo is a legend from the first people of North America. I think more towards the Canada region, but I'm sure it bleeds over into the United States, where if a person commits cannibalism, the spirit of the Wendigo, which I believe is a wind spirit, enters into them and they become cannibals. There even have been like I remember at some point in Canada there was a man who had in the grip of winter eaten his whole family, and he was charged with being a Wendigo, and I'm sure faced a fairly steep penalty. My introduction to it is, interestingly enough, with the Hulk 180 and 181. In those issues, the Hulk is fighting the Wendigo, which is a cannibal and a person who has to eat flesh to become that in the Canadian wilderness. But I've always found it, it was very lurid to me with the whole cannibalism. And from the comics, he's a big white dude who's furry and can fight Hulk and Wolverine at the same time. But the cannibalism part, the man-eater, weirdly enough, there's a Spider-Man issue called like The Wind of the Wendigo, where it's just about like Peter Parker is dealing with weird things happening, and they kind of give the illusion that somehow that wind is affecting his life in New York City in that issue. And I, thought 5th edition had it, but it didn't. But I'll plug a buddy of mine, if it's okay. Eric Blode, who does Dark Places and Demogorgons, has a cryptid manual that is fantastic, along with his other stuff. And if you've watched Supernatural, I know there was at least the first season there was an episode about it. I just have always thought they were really really kind of interesting.
But I think they call it a Wendigo. Like, well, it's Supernatural. They gave it like.
I'm sorry.
No, I think you're right, and that's what I would say is a Wendigo. But I think in Supernatural they pronounced it Wendigo, because I remember thinking that was like a weird pronunciation. But I'm from Kentucky, so I'm probably wrong, anyways.
As am I. Yeah.
But isn't there also in like the current version of Alpha Flight? There's a Wendigo, which is basically like a Hulk. It's like a gamma infused.
Yes. It's Gamma Flight, which actually #1 came out today.
Okay.
And I forgot all about that because I'm really behind in Al Ewing's run, but so far it is the best Hulk story I've ever read, and I really enjoyed Peter David's run in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
He just brought a whole new dimension of horror, and I forgot all about that.
Yeah, because I've been reading it's the Immortal Hulk. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
It is so good. But we're going to talk about the Wendigo or Wendigo or however the heck you say it.
Yeah, whichever. Yeah.
Yeah, whichever. In D&D or role-playing games, not necessarily D&D.
Sure.
So, Chris, have you ever used a Wendigo or a Wendigo sort of adjacent creature in any of the games that you've ran?
Yeah, not necessarily straight up a Wendigo, but I have done. I run a lot of horror mysteries. It's just kind of one of the things I like, and as well as Star Wars. But I've run it where they've gotten clues that a monster is eating people, and they've been hunting it. And then, spoilers, it turns out the person that actually hired them was actually the one doing it all. He was actually a cannibal, but he was actually he had to replace body parts and eat flesh to stay alive because he's immortal. And he's just going from town to town doing this, and they finally figure it out.
Okay, that's cool.
It was a pretty unique story. That was a lot of fun to try to keep. Hey, look over here, but this is what's really going on. The whole magician thing.
What system did you use?
The last time I ran, I did Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I actually used the Orkin filter out of there. It's very similar as far as replacing body parts, but I've done that a few times. I like that idea. It really throws players for a loop.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you get players who are really good at investigating, then you have to really when they start asking questions about what kind of bite marks, can I tell what kind of creature was chewing it? Like, they really get into that in-depth stuff. And then you run into the game balance of how much do you mislead them? How much do you let the dice determine it? How much do you let them turn into CSI where they're sprinkling baby powder and super glue when they solve the mystery, that kind of stuff. Like I said, I haven't used the exact Wendigo, but I've used something like that. What about you, Michael? Have you used it before?
I have never used a Wendigo specifically that I can recall. And I just, thinking of it's an interesting choice for a monster, I think, because by its very nature, it's kind of an evil thing. Like, there's not a lot of ambiguity with, is this thing evil or not? I mean, I guess you could argue that, like, in a survival situation, like the movie Alive, and you get a plane full of people, half of them die from the plane crash, the other half, it's either cannibalize or die. Are they evil?
Right.
I would argue that in that case, they're not. But I think the curse of the Wendigo is specifically someone does an evil act and they become the Wendigo. Maybe there is a moral gray question there that maybe someone, that could be the interesting thing, is someone becomes a Wendigo, but they claim that, it wasn't an evil act. And, do you come to their aid? And, maybe it becomes a trial, the classic, you have to try to convince a jury that this person, though they're an evil spirit now, got there innocently somehow, or it was a mistake. I didn't do it, but the Wendigo wind picked me or thought it was me. I don't know. So I'm trying to think of some interesting ways to use it, but I never have actually used one. But Mark, have you used a Wendigo before?
I have, and it was in D&D. They were probably they didn't have third level spells yet. So what I basically did is kind of tied it more towards wood elf culture, not to parallel wood elves to first people of North America, but I felt like wood elves were, in my opinion, I could expand folklore in a similar way. And so in their case, there was there was an agreement with a town, with a village, where the villagers could, cut a certain amount of wood. That was some agreement they made over the last decades, and those people that were cutting the wood started, being killed and mutilated, and so they had to go in and figure out what was going on. It was probably a little more action oriented just because of the nature of D&D, but they did have to deal with the diplomacy of the wood elves in the forest, and the wood elves were led by a treant. And so they had to negotiate there, and then they ended up finding some corruption amongst the humans. And it was just kind of I was sort of laying the groundwork for this sandbox a little bit, where there aren't easy answers to some of these questions.
Right.
So the wood elves so they had been infiltrated by some kind of cult. I think it was, I don't remember. They were infiltrated, so they were exposing that, and the Wendigo was the catalyst for all of this.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think it's an interesting. My goal is to never just have something that's just a bag of hit points. Like there's something to it.
Sure.
And when I run combat, sometimes it's just a bag of hit points. That's the way it works. But I try to think of some ways. And so the first thing that came to my mind here is, so the players come into this Arctic or this, wintry type place, secluded area. And much like, we've already said, there's probably been people disappearing, body parts being found. But there's already an adventurer there, like a big game hunter sort of thing, who is all excited about hunting this fabled creature and is really super excited about it. And it turns out that they have manipulated things to create one because they wanted to hunt it. So they are actually the bad guy of the situation. And at some point in time, the players use or have the ability to use like a speak with the dead, and then have that thing, the dead person say, "I forgive you, person who ate me," and break the curse of the Wendigo, because once forgiveness has been offered, that would break the curse. I have no idea if this is true or not, but that's my version. It would be.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
And so the big game hunter then becomes the bad guy outright because they're so infuriated that they can't capture the Wendigo, and that's who the players would end up fighting if they actually followed the investigation down that line. They wouldn't have to, but can you think of any other ways, Chris, that you might use a Wendigo?
I like the wind spirit kind of thought. So it'd be kind of neat to describe things as this wind comes in and there's not much left of the body, and then it leaves and they have to kind of figure out what's going on. But I think the Wendigo is definitely set up for a mystery. It's not really going to be something that you're just going to throw out there just to go kill and go collect treasure. Because what's their motivation? It's probably to hide, try to seek a way to break the curse, which that could be a neat one. Maybe somebody isn't a Wendigo all the time. And they come to the party and say, so-and-so cursed me, please help me break this curse. And they have to find a way to break the curse. Yeah. At the same time, they have to keep the Wendigo from not eating everybody.
Yeah. Well, and there could be a way, I think the traditional story is that it's tied to cannibalism, but you could take that and say, like, maybe there's a fey spirit that curses people for other affronts, and they could be petty, like very petty offenses. And like half the people in this village are Wendigo now because they don't keep, whatever the ancient laws of the fey, and they don't like pour salt out before every meal or something. You could take it almost humorous, but you could also make it serious, where if you're greedy, if you lie to your best friend, or if you break your marriage vows, like there could be this whole thing of you become a cursed creature by breaking mores or laws that maybe these people aren't even aware of anymore.
Or you could have the kind of crazy fae who thinks she's the most beautiful creature, but everybody spurns her. So if you don't like my flesh, I will make you crave everybody else's.
Yeah, that's excellent.
I mean, that's a really kind of twisted way, but
But we
then
like
then the
twisted.
party has to go figure out. The party
Yeah,
has to go find that creature.
Yeah.
I find I kind of unconsciously always have a slight horror bent to whatever I run, which is weird because I've never, like, I read horror books now, but I never used to read or watch horror. I was always very scared of it. But if I'm letting my mind wander, it's going into a dark place.
Yeah.
So,
I
for the adventurers to deal with.
Right. And I kind of, again, there are no 5th edition official Wendigo stats, but I think definitely I would kind of skin them like, pardon the pun, skin them like a werewolf, where they aren't the Wendigo all the time. They probably have regeneration. Like I don't think you can actually kill a Wendigo without breaking the curse. They will always come back at some point. So they could be a very frightening and deadly enemy if you do want to go a very combat heavy way. You know, you could literally have the players, I'm thinking Rhyme with the Frost Maiden now, out in the middle of the wilderness. It's snowy, they're lost, they're not in civilization, and this creature attacks them every night. And it comes back at full strength the next day, but slowly over time, the characters are having to use all of their resources. They're not getting full rest because it comes back like every 8 hours. And this could be like a very frightening encounter for a high level party where they start off thinking, fireball it, boom, no problem, go to sleep. And then it shows up in 8 hours before they've had a full rest. And now they don't have fireball anymore. And, and it could be like a really slow attrition where it becomes deadly on the 7th version of this creature coming in. And so by the time they finish traveling to the far side, now they're at their weakest state. And then they have to deal with the investigation side of what is this thing? Where is it? Because if it comes back tonight, we're kind of hosed.
Right.
All right. So Mark, do you have any other ways that you might use it in the future?
So, one of the things that I, looking back, kind of wish I had thought of, it could be aside from just dealing with the curse of the Wendigo in some way, it could be an interesting way to make the players have to get their first magic item, whether it be a weapon or something like that, and I had not thought of the fact that it's like the curse of lycanthropy. I can also, a lot of times with the store, I run a lot of demos, and I have an adventure I run that deals with a hag. It would be interesting if instead of a hag, though, you were dealing with maybe a pillar of the community who is trying to end this curse, but doesn't know how to do it, and lives with the guilt, but maybe can't even kill themselves. Maybe they've tried, like an Immortal Hulk, where it's, and if you could, my brain goes to, they could go find a magic weapon if there's no other way to end it. But again, I think that's a little more combat oriented. So,
right.
I really, it would be neat to kind of change the environment. I understand why the tundra, the frozen forest works, but it would be really neat to, just, a bog or desert or something, kind of play with expectations, because I think so many people are, if they've heard of the Wendigo, they're expecting, being in a wilderness setting, being cold. I think it would be really interesting to, with the bog, you could stumble upon where they hide their bones, and especially if you're in a bog and they are not always the Wendigo, they could become that, crazy person that lives out there, and, there's some reputation, but in this case it's real, and maybe they're out there trying to sow the rumors to keep people away, because they know that they can, cross X distance when they're a Wendigo, and they're just trying not to kill people if possible.
Yeah. I just had a last thought, and it's only loosely tied here.
Me too.
Okay, I'll let you go as well. Some sort of like a magical sword that is like legendarily will not kill an innocent person. Like if you are innocent, you will be unharmed.
That's great.
but it's just a lie.
Yeah.
And then the rich people use it to sentence poor people to death. It's like, they blame them for the crime.
Yeah.
Like, well, if you're innocent, you won't be harmed. And then they just strike them down. And so, at some point in this story, the blade would become infused with the magic that actually does that. Because like one of the heroes would stand up and say, well,
Sure.
I'm innocent. But I don't have a full thought out flesh idea there. I have the kernel of a sword that won't kill an innocent person, just to see what you could do with it. So Chris,
like
what was
that.
your thought?
I like that.
This would take the right party, but you could have one of your players somehow get cursed.
Oh,
and
wow.
Slowly they begin more and more encounters. You could play with that as a GM of, okay, Michael, you walk into the bar and you start to drool because it's a packed bar, but you have to go in here to get such and such information. Can you resist the urge?
Mm-hmm.
That would
And
be
just
cool.
build that up. Again, you'd have to have the right players. I understand that.
Sure.
Because not everybody's going to want to play around with the curse, but you could have that, and then the rest of the party has to, find a way to keep them, their hunger, in control, and keep them from turning into this horrible monster.
Yeah, I do
and
like
at the
that.
same time, break the curse.
Well, and we kind of talked about at the beginning, like I would never want to take a player's agency away and say you have to be a cannibal so that now you're the Wendigo.
Right.
But if you have the curse being from other things, like like an affront that you're not aware of, like I didn't recite a certain prayer before I entered this temple, I'm cursed now. And I do like that where it slowly builds. And if they do succumb and they do take on the flesh of an innocent person, like they consume the flesh of an innocent person, then the curse is unbreakable. So you have to find a way to break the curse before they succumb to the temptation, which could be purely role play, or it could even be like a mechanic, like, they had to make a con save or a will save, or, it keeps getting like one harder each time or something. That could be a lot of fun. But yeah, I think that was my initial hesitation of having a player-focused Wendigo, is because the association with cannibalism. But if you change it a little bit, I think that actually could be a very cool encounter and very like a 2 or 3 shot.
Yeah, it'd be similar to vampirism as you slowly start craving that kind of thing. Like I said, it would be a slow build.
Mm-hmm.
And I would throw in things like you start realizing, the smell, you can feel your strength will be imbued. Like you start feeling like things are going to change, in your body if you do this. So it'd be similar to vampirism, but just using cannibalism.
Well, and how cool would it be if it would say your party's paladin and a more of a traditional paladin, and they get cursed because of somebody you defeated, and to end the curse, then they have to decide if they can work with this at least morally gray person who, is gonna be their only, because how many people know about Wendigo that aren't Wendigo? Right. It would be real interesting to challenge moral assumptions and really explore what they and their God believe and what they're willing to do. And I always, when I think of the traditional paladin, a lot of times I feel like they're real sharp on things. Like they're more zealots than I'm not saying they're not good people, but lawful good in a certain extreme could be just as dangerous as chaotic evil.
Right.
Right.
And I always we don't usually do alignment in our games. We usually do consequences of actions, but I always like exploring assumptions and also looking at culture and folklore and such.
Right. And then it said one last thought, the idea, again, maybe the paladin would be the perfect person to get this, where the curse is slowly building, and then you get to a position where you're about to be attacked by this overwhelming force that it's going to kill everybody. So the paladin could choose to purposefully consume the flesh to invoke the spirit so that they can then defend everyone else. It's like a version of a sacrifice. Like I will allow myself to become this cursed creature to protect everybody, but then I will have to live with this curse forever. That could be a fun, kind of almost like a superhero origin, supervillain origin story kind of a thing. So, all right. Well,
it's very cool.
Go ahead.
It could be fun too, because think about as a player, if I described to you, Michael, hey, you walk into a bar and you can almost hear the heartbeat of somebody as you start to drool, and your first thought more likely is going to be vampirism. So it'd be kind of
Right.
fun to watch the players try to cure vampirism and I'm going to go to this temple and cure vampirism. And they do it and they go, it didn't work.
Yeah, right.
Right.
You can see your
Your faith
reflection.
must be
Garlic doesn't
strong enough.
matter.
Yeah.
That could
It'd be kind of
Well,
neat to just see how many different paths do they go down before the players go, I never even thought of a Wendigo. Like, who
Yeah.
thinks of that?
Right.
Like,
Well, and it would be neat too to deal with the fact that they're allies, let's say within the church or whatever. You know, they are so guided by these decrees that they're even being hunted by their own, their own brotherhood or their own church. It could really, and meanwhile, this person has no idea what they did, and it has done good things in their life. I'm not sure what's happened.
I think we've gone for hours.
Yeah. But this was very
sorry.
interesting. So thank you, Mark, for bringing that to the table. So the stream is still going wonky.
You guys have a great idea.
It's sometimes green, sometimes red. So I don't know if anyone can watch. I don't know if anybody is watching, but we will at least throw out the question for audience Q&A. If anybody would like to ask any of us a question, doesn't have to be role play game related, but it certainly makes sense that it would be. Now's the time. So while we're waiting for the delay to catch up, Mark, where can people find you if they want to interact with you on the internet? Where can they find your blog? And where can they find your store if they want to go buy some stuff?
So Comic Book World is in Florence, Kentucky, 7130 Turfway Road. I have another store in Louisville, Kentucky. It's on Shepherdsville Road. So that's www.comicbookworld.com. So Cross Plains, my blog, it is Cross Plains, PLANES.com. And I have a Facebook page for it. On Twitter, I'm at Sunsort, big Thundar fan. And so Cross Plains comes from the fact that I always like pulp and I always like mixed genre stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert E. Howard was born in Cross Plains, Texas, PLAINS. So that's where I get the name from.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always glad to. This was great. I cannot thank you guys enough for letting me come on here and talk and share ideas. This is phenomenal. You guys are great.
Well, thank you.
And,
I appreciate you joining us.
I really appreciate it.
I thought you brought a lot to the table. It's always fun. Chris, where can people find you on the internet?
Thank you.
Twitter's the easiest. It's Burlew_Chris. Otherwise, you can hear my velvety tones on the Redemption podcast on a regular basis, or here.
Yep. Every other Wednesday, we'll be here at 9 p.m. I don't know who the guest is for next time yet, but again, we do have Rob Schwab scheduled for July 21st. So if nothing else, come back for him because he's a riot. I love Rob.
He is. He's spectacular.
Yeah, so I can't wait to get him back on the show. And of course, my name is Michael. Most of everything I do can be found here at the RPG Academy, someplace or the other, except for Farm to Fable, which is my Smallville rewatch fan cast, which we were just about to start season 3. So if you like the Smallville TV show or willing to give it a shot, I have a whole podcast dedicated to rewatching every episode of that show and talking about it. Other than that, I'll be here. And then Monday through Friday, about 2 o'clock on the Eastern time, I've been playing old video games I played as a kid. I'm currently playing through Shining Force from the Sega Genesis. I'm about halfway, maybe at this point, 60% of the way through the game. So thank you, everyone who's watching now. If there is anyone, I don't know, the stream seems kind of be weird. But if you're watching in the future on YouTube or if you're listening through the audio only, if you have any thoughts on any things we talked about, if you've used a Wendigo, or if you have ideas for using a Wendigo, or if you have ideas about interesting ways to use the drow, please let us know. Comment on the question or on the post, or hit us up on Twitter and talk to us there. So thanks, and everyone, good night.